Canada is having a reckoning with its genocidal history. Across the country, searches are being carried out for unmarked burial sites, which are burial sites located near residential schools that could contain the bodies of Indigenous children that went to these schools. I spoke with Manitoba Kuwi-Watanawe Okimakanak Grand Chief Garrison Satie about this. So could you tell me what your role is in the search for unmarked burials at former residential school sites, please?
It is very important for me as a Grand Chief of our territory to be able to advocate for the nations that have their relatives buried in unmarked graves all across the nation, but most particularly for us, it's the Brandon residential schools, former Brandon residential school site, because we know that a lot of those graves, unmarked graves, are people that are from our nations, and I think that it's important for me to ensure that we do our utmost to make sure that these unmarked burials are, searched for the sake of the family, for the sake of the family. And I think that it's important for me as a leader to ensure that we do our utmost to ensure that the families have closure and that the families have some kind of way to go and pay their respects, because a lot of the people in these schools never made it home. So you're looking at 133 residential schools across the nation, and then and at least 10,000 never made it home. So the question is, where did they go? What happened to them? And we have an idea of what happened and why they were buried there. It's just because some of them were murdered, some of them died of diseases that were part of experiments. And so a lot of things happened. So it's important for us to find closure for our nations, for our people and our relatives. So it's important that I advocate and ensure that there's processes involved to search these unmarked graves.
Thank you for explaining. And is it specifically the Brandon residential school site that you're involved in with your advocacy?
No, we advocate for all of the. We join other organizations in their quest to find unmarked burials in their territories. But most, for us as an organization, we're primarily concerned with the communities that are within our organization, that they are. We want to ensure that their relatives are looked after in such a way that the people in these nations have some kind of closure. And then for us, it's at least 9 communities that have lost their relatives in these schools and that they never made it back. So it's incumbent upon me to ensure that I do everything to make sure that there's a search, and also having access to modern technology to help us in this search. And we've been advocating for that.
Would you be able to tell me a little bit more about this modern technology and how it's used to carry out these searches?
Well, the sonar equipment that we've been utilizing has been used in my First Nation, and it was a very solemn undertaking. And the residential school survivors were there when the searches were being conducted, and they brought in a team of experts to do this for us. So, and a lot of the people in my First Nation went to the site, and they were there waiting and just observing, because they have a connection to these remains. They have a connection to the people that are missing. So the site was searched, and then there was nothing discovered there at that site. So, but at the same time, we utilize the most advanced technological equipment to be able to do this, and it costs money. So that's why we continue to ask for funding to be able to conduct these searches. And then I know that other communities have done the same. So it's it's a process that we have to undertake, and I'm thankful that we've been able to do that. But I think there's a lot of people that want that same kind of equipment in their First Nation.
So given the fact that you said a lot of other people want it, it's safe to say that not all reserves are carrying out the same type of searches in terms of like having access to the same technology.
Yeah, like not everybody has access to that technology, but I think when we know for a fact that there's a residential school that was on their First Nation or near their First Nation, those are the ones that we are most concerned about, because not every First Nation had a residential school. So it's the ones that have had residential. That's where we focus on those communities to ensure that sites are searched.
The technology that you have access to, has this been funded by the federal government?
We've asked for funding, yes, and the federal government has been assisting us. And also there's some provision from the provincial government at the time, so but minimal. But I think that the federal government has been very helpful for us to conduct these searches.
Why is it so important that the federal government provides the financial support?
It is because of the federal government that these young students were in residential schools. It was legislation that prompted the removal of children in the residential schools. It was deliberate and also organized effort to colonize these students, and it was the government that put them in there. So it's ultimately their responsibility. It's ultimately their responsibility to ensure that we do our utmost to find these relatives that are buried across the nation and in northern Manitoba. So it's ultimately their responsibility.
Thank you. And I just wanted to ask again about the technology. I understand that there's ground surveys going on and aerial surveys as well in some communities. Are both of these methods being used?
I think the ground searches have been the ones that we've been utilizing, and I think that because of the way that particular process is really, because it's right there on the ground, and then that's how we are able to detect if there's things that are under the earth that can determine if these are human remains or not. So that's what we've been doing in the ground searches.
Thank you. And in the case of finding anomalies through these ground searches, what are the next steps once anomalies are detected?
For us, we've been proposing ideas and solutions to the situations that we're faced with. And for example, we have to protect these sites. As of now, they are not protected. And we've been advocating to have a similar process to what they have in the United States. And the process is called NAGPRA, the Native American Graves Protection and Repatriation Act, known as NAGPRA. And it is a federal law that exists to protect the sites, and also the consultation with Native Americans regarding repatriation of their loved ones. So also it is a law to ensure that objects and sacred objects and objects of cultural patrimony in museums are repatriated to communities and First Nations. And because it's a law in the States, we don't have such a law in Canada. And we are advocating that there should be something like that in Canada to ensure that these sites are protected, because some of them are on private land and our people do not have access to go to ceremonies there. So we're advocating for that, and hopefully that in the next little while we'll be able to see changes to legislation here that will allow our people to go to ceremonies, pay their respects, and have some form of closure.
So for now, at least in the sites that you're involved in, will digs not be carried out until this type of legislation is put forward?
We will continue to do what we can in the like immediate measures right now. Current measures are being taken, and we can't wait around for legislation because it's been a long time. It's been quite a long journey for a lot of our people. So I think that we will continue to search, regardless if there's legislation for the protection of these sites. And we have to find solutions, and we're presenting solutions to governments. This is what needs to be done, and this is what we're doing, and we need to get on board. So those are the things that we're doing right now.
What would you say to people who are spreading the narrative that this is a hoax and, showing up to these sites with shovels, saying, let's just discover what's there?
Yeah, I think it is disrespectful. I think that they're ill-informed, and I think that they're just trying to deny the realities of what we had to go through as Indigenous people through the residential school systems. It's a group of people that see things through tunnel vision, and I feel sorry for them. And but at the same time, like, to say that this is a hoax and the narrative has been false is something that we do not accept, and neither do we pay attention to people such as those groups of people that try to purport that this is a hoax. It's a disrespectful to all of our people. 10,000 people never went home, and then we know they're somewhere, buried somewhere. So to say that it's a hoax is very disrespectful to our families and to our nations.
Do you think that politicians on different levels of government should do more to denounce this narrative?
Absolutely, absolutely. It is incumbent upon them to quash any kind of misleading information, because our people have went through this. Our people have gone through enough already, and for people to start saying things like that is harmful for the survivors. It's harmful to the families, and for us as leaders, that we've been trying our best to ensure that we find our missing children and in unmarked graves. So, and I think the government should step up and just lay down the facts, and that this is what's happened, and then we do everything within our power to ensure that there's a reconciliation process involved when it comes to unmarked burials.
Thank you. I did an interview at the conference with the special interlocutor, Kimberly Murray, and she said that she was going to communities that she was invited to understand, what they wish to be done with these sites, and recognizing that not all communities want the same thing. Have you met with her? Has she visited?
I have I've been in the same conference as her. She was very supportive of our ideas, and being allowed to present on a national forum like that was very, very helpful for us to be able to continue what we need to do. So we've not had a chance to have a follow-up meeting, but I know that she's in agreement and very supportive of what we're doing, and we will continue to work with her to ensure that all nations in Canada have an opportunity to move forward and bring closure to the situation we're facing.
Thank you very much. And I'm wondering, could you explain to me why is it so important that First Nations have agency over this situation and conducting their own search rather than just letting the federal government spearhead these searches?
I think it's because it's a cultural, it's spiritual, and there's ceremonies and protocols in place when we approach the remains of all relatives. Even historically, there are many remains. There's a lot of remains that were found, and they go back hundreds of years. There's a process and protocol to all this, and only the Indigenous people know how to do those protocols. So that's why we want to do it, because it's done in a way that is cultural and also traditional, and I know that the foreign entities do not have that kind of knowledge, and whenever we do something like this, it's a really solemn undertaking. We have to make sure that there's ceremonies involved before we do such a thing, and then our people are comfortable when there's ceremonies involved and there's different things that need to be done, and only people that are knowledgeable in those kinds of protocols are allowed to do this. So that's why we have to do it the way we want to do it, and we have to do it ourselves.
Thank you. And just lastly, I wanted to come back to the hoax narrative. Is this something you've come face to face with, like, deniers coming to the community, or even trying to speak to you and promote this type of rhetoric face to face or online?
No, I'm waiting for the opportunity, because I do have a message for them. I'm going to educate them. I'm going to give them facts, and need to realize that in a respectful way, what they're saying is very detrimental. And I'll welcome that opportunity. We discuss this with anybody to ensure that the history and the legacy of these residential schools is communicated to all Canadians and educated, and get rid of some of the biases they have and the things that have been distorted historically. So I'm an educator by profession, and I'm able to teach and communicate with anyone when it comes to these unmarked burials.
Thank you so much. Is there anything that I didn't ask that you'd like to share, you think is important for me to look into more?
For me, that's the most important thing, is finding a place for these unmarked burials, so that they can be designated as a place where people can come and pay their respects, ultimately to have these sites protected, and also having that ability to be able to go and conduct ceremonies at this site is very important. I want to make sure that that happens. I want to make sure that people can come there and reflect and grieve and mourn, but also have a chance to have a process of closure, and that involves ceremonies. So those are things that I really am advocating for, and we want to make sure that happens.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts and taking the time to speak with me. It's been a pleasure.
It's my honor. I hope it helps.